Hi everyone, welcome back for what is the final show of 2021, and for that we're going to be focusing on one of the teams of the year, Chelsea, the European champions, who have hit the buffers a little bit of late, and some of the context around it is the uncertainty around a number of their defenders. So we're going to take a look at that one by one. Cesar Azpilicueta, Antonio Rudiger, Andreas Christensen and Thiago Silva. Delighted to be joined by one of our Chelsea correspondents, Simon Johnson. And Simon, let's get started with Azpilicueta.
Well, hello, David. Yes, Azpilicueta, he's got a decision to make, and to be honest, we didn't expect this to be any form of complication, because he clearly is settled in London, loves Chelsea, is appreciated by everyone at the club. But Barcelona see the same traits in Azpilicueta as Chelsea do. They love his leadership, his professionalism. Clearly Barcelona are in need of a rebuild. Xavi knows Azpilicueta well from playing with him in Spain. So Barcelona have just thrown that little curveball into the equation and are saying, please come join us. And Chelsea have yet to get this contract nailed down. Azpilicueta wants obviously more than 1 year. I feel like we've talked about this regarding players in their 30s many times before, but we're just in this sort of awkward balance. I still think that Chelsea will get round to sitting down with him, but it's taken a lot longer than many of us expected.
Well, affectionately known as Dave, he's become a bit of a cult hero for the Blues. And he's also a key sort of conduit between the players, the coaches, the board. And it feels like they need that sort of character. Chelsea have always had really good leaders, and he seems the latest in a long line. But he's not really been playing so many matches recently.
No, I mean, he's the starts have improved in the last few games, but one suspects that's maybe because of injuries and COVID, etc. So when everyone's fully fit again, where does that leave him? And of course, that's also part of his decision. He still thinks he's got a number of years left at the top. He's also just really nailed his spot in the Spain team for the first time in his career, basically. And of course, the World Cup the next year. So that's also in his thinking, is like, I need to be playing regularly. I don't want to miss out on the World Cup. And yes, you're right to highlight that the role he has. He is a huge leader. So last year, when the pay cuts were being discussed because of the impacts of the pandemic, he was the man that Chelsea were talking to and the players were talking to. He was the middleman. He'll be the man that they'll be talking to now about the impacts of COVID, etc. He's a very, very important figure. He's not as outspoken as a John Terry, as a John Terry was as a captain, but he's very, very inspirational, and he's the kind of guy that you really, really will miss once he's gone.
Yeah, we've been to a number of events at Chelsea as well, and he's always there. He's interactive. I mean, he seems to bleed blue, so it'd be interesting to see what's going to happen on that front. You mentioned importance. Well, there aren't many more important to that team at the moment than Antonio Rudiger, and he's also one of the most talked about players I think I can remember in recent years in the transfer market, because he also has a contract expiring. It seems that many of Europe's leading clubs want him. There seems to be some sort of standoff over his terms, what Chelsea are offering and what he wants to earn. So can you bring us right up to date with this? And I'll also add, just before throwing to you, that I don't think his situation is as settled as some reports have made out, suggesting he's about to sign for Real Madrid. As I know it, the situation is still open. What about you?
Yeah, there's still some optimism, or still, shall I say, room for optimism, because nothing's been agreed yet. But other people tell me that Antonio is very upset about the offer that's been made to him. He's only on £90,000 a week, which is a remarkable sum for the ability he has, so I'm led to believe. He looks around in that dressing room and players talk about what they're on, and his own Germany teammates are on 3 times as much as he is, and he is looking at that going, hang on, I want a bit more of that, you know. There's been some crazy sums talked about that he's demanding. It's been repeated a number of times, £400,000 a week. I've been reassured that is categorically not the case. It's more around sort of the 180 to £200,000 a week mark, which I think is a very, very fair sum. But clearly Chelsea think differently. They've offered around £140,000 a week and made it pretty clear so far that they won't go any higher. That's the sum on the table, and they're not willing to go any higher. Now, Real Madrid are the favourites if Rudiger is to go anywhere. There's other clubs sniffing around, like Bayern Munich, perhaps PSG. There's only we're just sort of a week, 10 days away from clubs being officially allowed to approach Rudiger. Until the very last day, of course, Rudiger might sign a pre-contract, but I'll never forget John Terry signing a contract after the final league game of the season, so that's why there's always hope. But as things stand, I would still say Chelsea in a very, very dangerous situation of losing their best defender of 2021, or arguably the best defender.
Yeah, and you didn't mention, probably quite diplomatically, the possibility of Tottenham and Manchester United, according to certain reports. But crucially there, one of their most important, dependable players of 2021, he has retained his place in the side despite the contract situation. One player who hasn't, consistently anyway, is Andreas Christensen. And this is a fascinating and rather different scenario, because it seemed he had given indications to Chelsea that he would be prepared to sign, that a deal was maybe agreed or thereabouts, only to go in the other direction and turn it down. That seems to have upset the Chelsea hierarchy to the extraordinary extent that he has been removed from the team. I can't remember many players at this level having that sort of treatment based on a contract discussion, standoff, disagreement, call it what you like. My information is that he's also changed representatives just very recently. I think it was announced in the last 24 hours or so. So maybe that will either help the contract situation or maybe a transfer. Where are we with Christensen? Of course, somebody who was so notable in Chelsea's success, but also at international level with Denmark.
Yeah, it's been a really strange situation. This could have been wrapped up very easily in August. There was basically terms had been agreed. There was a few minor details that needed to be sorted out, and for one reason or another they weren't sorted out, and that gave Christensen time, whether you agree with him or not, that gave Christensen time to actually have a rethink, because it was a 5-year contract that had been agreed at the time, and then he thought, well, hang on a minute, do I really want to sign for 5 years? Again, the amount of money we're talking about, very similar to the offer that Rudiger was made. Do I really want to commit to that wage packet when another defender could come into the club on a lot more money? Or again, looking around the dressing room, there's a lot of players on a lot more money. Also, sort of lessening his chances of a move abroad. So that's why he went away and thought, well, perhaps a 3-year contract is what I want. The club weren't too happy with that. They came back though with a 3-year contract, but still the financial side of things proved a stumbling block, and so we're left in this really bizarre situation where Thomas Tuchel is out with him in public, questioning his commitment to the club. Whether you think that's fair when you sort of think of how Rudiger's being treated and starting every game is up to you. But I think it's set a very dangerous precedent where if Chelsea don't get their way, does that mean that you're dropped from the side? I think it's a very dangerous message to send to a dressing room where clearly there are going to be other players who are not only watching how Christensen's being treated, but also maybe thinking, well, hang on, how's this going to go down when it's my turn to knock on the door and ask for a pay rise?
And just quickly on the players, Thiago Silva, is that the more easier scenario?
Yeah, because Chelsea essentially left it in his hands and sort of said, look, because he's so valued there not just as a player, but the way he is around the club, the example he set. So essentially, it was a case of, if you want to stay, we'll keep you on quite happily. And I think Thiago Silva, with the World Cup in mind, is very happy to stay at Chelsea. So I'd be very surprised if a 1-year extension isn't sorted out at some point in the next few months.
like a fine wine, he seems to be getting better with age. So this all leads us to the point of who might be the one who stays or goes. And a fundamental issue here is there's a very realistic chance that one or more of them go. And that's why yourself, people like me, are being told that Chelsea will be in the market or are in the market for potentially a defender or two. We've seen the links. Jules Kounde was one of those very heavily linked with Chelsea in the summer and came close to a deal with Sevilla. Will that one be revisited? So yeah, two final questions for you. What are your predictions on who might stay or go, and what might Chelsea do to potentially replace them?
I'm still optimistic that 3 of the 4 will end up staying, and the odd one out being Rudiger. I think that Rudiger is the one most likely to leave, just based on what I'm hearing from inside the camp of how upset he is. But Christensen, I still have optimism there that because of his desire to stay at Chelsea is fundamental, is key. Azpilicueta is Chelsea through and through, and we've already nailed down the Thiago Silva thing. As for Jules Kounde, I think that deal, as you know, David, was so far down the line. He's a player that Tuchel wants. Tuchel's been planning for. Kounde wants to come to Chelsea. I'd be very surprised, despite the issues over the fee, which upset the deal going ahead. I'd be very surprised if Chelsea don't go back in for Kounde, because he's so much part of their thinking going forward, and he would really sort of bring that youth and energy to that back line.
Yeah, well, thank you very much for all of that analysis, those predictions, and we'll see what happens. I think Chelsea's priority in the weeks ahead is just to get their form back on track and then deal with this wider issue in due course. Simon, have a great Christmas, Happy New Year, and we'll speak again soon.